Sometimes the loudest revenge begins with a woman who says nothing at all. The courthouse doors swung open with a slow metallic groan, and the sound seemed to linger across the marble steps like the final note of a funeral bell. Claire Bennett stepped into the pale autumn sunlight without looking back. At 30 years old and 8 months pregnant, every careful step carried more than the weight of her unborn son. It carried the silence of a marriage that had just officially died. A crimson drop landed on the white stone beneath her. Then another. The young court clerk standing near the entrance gasped quietly, assuming the pregnant woman had gone into labor. Claire didn't stop. She simply pressed one trembling hand against the lower curve of her belly while the other tightened around the worn leather purse hanging from her shoulder. Inside courtroom 4, millionaire entrepreneur Ethan Crawford accepted congratulations from his attorney with the relaxed confidence of a man who believed every battle could be won with enough money and influence. "It's over," his lawyer said, sliding the signed divorce papers into a leather briefcase. She didn't contest a single condition. Ethan allowed himself a satisfied smile. After months of negotiations, accusations, and carefully calculated legal pressure, Claire had finally surrendered. No alimony beyond the minimum. No claim on additional company shares. No public statements. No scandal. Exactly as planned. Across the room, Vanessa Reed adjusted the diamond bracelet Ethan had given her the night before. Her sleek blonde hair caught the courtroom lights as she slipped her arm through his with effortless confidence. "I told you she'd break eventually," she whispered. "Women like Claire always do." Ethan's gray eyes drifted toward the courtroom doors. Claire hadn't cried. She hadn't begged. She hadn't even looked at him after signing the papers. For reasons he couldn't explain, that unsettled him more than any screaming argument ever could. "Mr. Crawford." The voice belonged to the elderly bailiff. "You almost forgot this." He handed Ethan a cream-colored envelope. His name appeared across the front in Claire's unmistakable handwriting. Nothing else. No return address. No warning. Just 2 words. "For Ethan." Vanessa laughed softly. Probably another emotional goodbye letter. Ethan turned the envelope over between his fingers. It felt strangely heavy. He almost tossed it into his briefcase unopened. Instead, he noticed a single sentence written across the sealed flap. "Please don't read this until I disappear." His smile faded. Disappear? For the first time that morning, an uneasy feeling settled deep inside his chest. Outside, Claire reached the bottom of the courthouse stairs as another sharp pain rippled through her abdomen. She paused beside a stone column, breathing slowly through the tightening pressure. The baby kicked once. Then again. "I'm almost there," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the distant city traffic. Just a little farther. A black sedan pulled quietly to the curb. An older woman stepped out, opened the rear door, and offered Claire a gentle, reassuring smile without asking a single question. Claire climbed inside. The door closed. Within seconds, the car disappeared into the stream of downtown traffic. Back inside the courthouse, Ethan stared at the envelope resting in his hands. He had spent 3 years convincing himself that Claire knew nothing. Nothing about the hidden accounts. Nothing about the forged signatures. Nothing about the promises he had broken long before Vanessa ever entered his life. He had been certain the divorce marked the end of the story. He had no way of knowing that the letter he now carried wasn't a farewell. It was the first page of the life he was about to lose. Every perfect victory hides a crack. Sometimes, all it takes is one sealed envelope for the whole empire to collapse. Ethan Crawford waited until the courthouse had nearly emptied before slipping into the back seat of his black Mercedes. Rain clouds rolled across the Manhattan skyline, swallowing the afternoon sun until the city looked wrapped in cold steel. His driver pulled away from the curb without a word while Vanessa leaned comfortably against Ethan's shoulder, scrolling through social media. "You know what's trending already?" she laughed, holding up her phone. "Crawford divorce official. Everyone thinks you're finally free." Free. The word should have felt satisfying. Instead, Ethan's eyes drifted once again toward the cream-colored envelope resting on the leather seat beside him. "For Ethan. Please don't read this until I disappear." What kind of dramatic nonsense is that? Vanessa scoffed. Claire always wanted attention. Ethan didn't answer. Something about Claire's expression refused to leave his mind. She hadn't looked defeated. She hadn't looked angry. She had looked peaceful. That frightened him more than tears ever could. His fingers broke the seal. The paper inside was thick, almost like expensive stationery Claire rarely bought for herself. The first line stopped his breathing. If you're reading this, then I'm already gone. No greeting. No accusations. No, dear Ethan. Just those 9 words. He frowned and continued. You spent 3 years believing I was fighting to keep our marriage. I wasn't. I was fighting to keep your soul from becoming something you could never survive. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Oh, please. She reached for the letter. Ethan instinctively pulled it away. I'll read it later. She shrugged. Whatever. We have dinner with the investors tonight. Don't let your ex ruin your mood. The Mercedes disappeared into evening traffic while the rain finally began to fall. Across the city, Claire Bennett quietly watched the storm through the window of a private maternity clinic. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender. A fetal monitor filled the silence with steady rhythmic beeps. Beep, beep, beep. Dr. Emily Lawson adjusted the ultrasound probe before offering Claire a reassuring smile. Your baby is still strong. Claire closed her eyes. That's all I wanted to hear. Emily hesitated before placing another folder beside the hospital bed. Are you absolutely certain you don't want him notified? Claire slowly shook her head. He made his choice. And your condition? Another pause. Claire rested both hands across her swollen belly. My son deserves to enter this world with peace. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Emily glanced at the unopened folder. Inside were medical reports Ethan had never seen. Blood tests, cardiology evaluations, specialist consultations. Each one carried dates stretching back nearly 2 years. Claire had hidden every diagnosis, every hospital visit, every frightening prognosis. Not because she feared Ethan, because she feared what losing everything would do to him while his company balanced on the edge of financial disaster. Back inside the moving Mercedes, Ethan unfolded the second page. His heartbeat slowed as his eyes scanned the next paragraph. There are 7 things you've never known. I prayed you would never have to learn them this way. But lies grow heavier than truth, and eventually someone must carry the weight. Beneath the sentence appeared a numbered list. Only the first item had been revealed. Number 1. The company should have collapsed 26 months ago. Ethan froze. A strange pressure tightened across his chest. That wasn't possible. 26 months ago had been the year Crawford Technologies unexpectedly recovered after investors suddenly renewed their confidence. No one, not even his board of directors, had ever discovered why. The rain struck harder against the windows. Somewhere beyond the blurred skyline, a pregnant woman disappeared into the longest night of her life. And for the first time since signing the divorce papers, Ethan Crawford realized he might never have understood the woman he had just lost. Some truths don't explode all at once. They crack the foundation, one memory at a time. Ethan lowered the letter onto his lap, but his eyes never left the first revelation. The company should have collapsed 26 months ago. The words echoed through his mind louder than the rain pounding against the roof of the Mercedes. No, he whispered almost unconsciously. That year had been impossible. Crawford Technologies had lost nearly 40% of its value in a single week after a cybersecurity failure exposed confidential client data. Investors fled. Banks suspended negotiations. Financial analysts predicted bankruptcy within 30 days. Then, almost overnight, everything changed. An anonymous investment group purchased enough shares to stabilize the company. The lawsuits quietly disappeared. Creditors withdrew their demands. The media suddenly shifted its attention to another corporate scandal. Even Ethan's board had called it a miracle. He never questioned it. Until now. His phone vibrated. Chief Financial Officer Daniel Brooks. Ethan, congratulations on wrapping up the divorce, Daniel said cheerfully. We'll see you at the investor dinner? I'll be there. You sound distracted. I'm fine. The call ended. He immediately unfolded the next page. A folded document slipped onto the leather seat. Not another letter. A bank statement. Ethan stared at the logo. The account belonged to Claire. His heartbeat slowed. One transaction had been circled in blue ink. $38 million. Transferred exactly 26 months earlier. Recipient, Hamilton Capital Recovery Fund. Hamilton Capital, the anonymous investment group that had rescued Crawford Technologies. His fingers tightened around the paper. Impossible. Claire had never possessed that kind of money. She had worked as a museum curator before marrying him. She drove the same modest sedan for years. She rarely bought designer clothes. She clipped grocery coupons. She apologized whenever she spent more than $100 on baby furniture. Where had $38 million come from? Vanessa glanced over. What is it now? He silently handed her the document. She barely looked before laughing. Obviously fake. You think so? Claire's trying to manipulate you. She handed it back without another glance. Ethan wanted to believe her. He truly did. Yet something deep inside refused. Claire had never forged documents. She had many flaws, but dishonesty had never been one of them. The rain finally eased as the Mercedes stopped before the glass entrance of Crawford Tower. Reporters were already gathering outside for the evening investor reception. Camera flashes lit the sidewalk. Ethan, Mr. Crawford. One photo with Miss Reed. He ignored every question. His mind remained trapped inside the envelope. Far across the city, Claire slowly walked through a quiet hospital corridor. She wore no makeup. Her loose blonde hair rested over one shoulder, framing a face that looked both exhausted and strangely peaceful. She paused outside the neonatal intensive care unit. Through the large glass window, tiny premature babies slept beneath warm lights while nurses moved silently between incubators. Claire placed one hand over her own belly. Just a few more weeks, she whispered. A familiar voice interrupted the silence. I wondered if you'd come. Claire turned. An older man in a dark suit stood at the end of the hallway. His silver hair was neatly combed. Kind blue eyes studied her with quiet concern. Michael Hamilton, chairman of Hamilton Capital, the same investment firm named in Ethan's document. You shouldn't be walking so much, Michael said gently. The baby likes to move. He smiled sadly. And his father still doesn't know. Claire lowered her eyes. He'll know. When he's ready to understand. Michael looked toward the rain-streaked window before speaking again. I kept my promise. No one has ever learned who financed the rescue. Claire nodded. Thank you. You saved his company. She gave a faint, bittersweet smile. I wasn't trying to save the company. Michael frowned. What were you trying to save? Claire's fingers slowly intertwined over her unborn child. The man he used to be. Back at Crawford Tower, Ethan slipped the next page from the envelope. Across the top, in Claire's elegant handwriting, only 5 words appeared. You never asked where I disappeared every Thursday. The smallest habits are often the ones we never question until they become evidence. Ethan remained alone in his office long after the investor reception had begun downstairs. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan shimmered beneath fresh rain, thousands of lights reflecting across wet streets like broken glass. His untouched whiskey rested beside Claire's letter. He unfolded the next page. Every Thursday afternoon, I told you I was volunteering at the Children's Museum. He remembered. Every Thursday for nearly 2 years. She always returned home tired. Sometimes pale. Sometimes smiling despite obvious exhaustion. He had barely noticed. Back then, his life revolved around acquisition meetings, shareholder calls, private flights, and Vanessa's growing presence at every corporate event. He continued reading. You never asked why I always came home wearing the same blue sweater. A faint crease formed between his brows. The blue sweater. Claire's favorite oversized cardigan. She wore it almost every Thursday. He had teased her once. You look like you're hiding inside a blanket. She had simply smiled. I like feeling warm. He remembered saying nothing else. The next paragraph struck harder. The museum was only 5 blocks away from St. Matthew's Oncology Center. Ethan stopped breathing. Oncology. His eyes returned to the word. Again. Then again. No. Claire had never mentioned cancer. She had never spoken about hospitals. Never complained. Never even missed family dinners unless she claimed she had museum meetings. His hands began to shake. Beneath the sentence rested a folded appointment card. Patient, Claire Elizabeth Bennett. Department, Oncology. Recurring appointments. Every Thursday. For 23 consecutive months. The date of the first visit matched almost perfectly with the beginning of Crawford Technologies' financial collapse. Ethan leaned back slowly. A memory surfaced without warning. One Thursday evening nearly 2 years earlier, Claire had arrived home unusually late. Her blonde hair had been damp from unexpected rain. She looked exhausted. He hadn't even asked where she had been. Instead, he had accused her of forgetting an investor dinner. She apologized, cooked him dinner anyway, then quietly excused herself before dessert because she claimed she had a headache. That night, He had slept beside her without noticing the fresh adhesive bandage hidden beneath her sleeve. The realization settled over him like ice. His office door opened. Vanessa stepped inside, carrying 2 champagne glasses. "There you are." She noticed his expression immediately. "Ethan." He silently handed her the hospital appointment card. She glanced down for barely 2 seconds. "It proves nothing. It proves she was receiving treatment. Or pretending to." He stared at her. "You really believe that?" Vanessa crossed her arms. "She's manipulating you exactly the way she always has." For the first time since meeting Vanessa, her voice irritated him. Not because of what she said, because of how quickly she dismissed everything. He folded the card and slipped it back into the envelope. "I need to verify this." Vanessa forced a smile. "Fine. Verify it." She leaned closer. "But don't forget who lied to you for years." After she left, silence reclaimed the office. Ethan reached for the next page. Another photograph slipped free. Its edges were worn from being handled many times. Claire sat in a hospital chair wearing the familiar blue sweater. A clear 4-line disappeared beneath her sleeve. Her blonde hair was tied loosely behind her neck. Despite the fatigue in her face, she was smiling. Not at the camera, at the tiny ultrasound image she held against her chest. On the back of the photograph, written in neat blue ink, were only 2 sentences. "This was the day I learned I was carrying our son. It was also the day I learned I might not live long enough to watch him grow." The room suddenly felt too small, too quiet, too empty. For months, Ethan had believed Claire was hiding ordinary secrets. Shopping receipts, private arguments, small disappointments. He had never imagined she had been hiding appointments that could determine whether she lived or died. His phone buzzed again. This time, the caller ID displayed a name he had not seen in years. Dr. Emily Lawson. Sometimes a single phone call arrives years too late. Not because it was delayed, but because someone finally found the courage to make it. Ethan stared at the screen until the call nearly ended. Dr. Emily Lawson. The name meant nothing to him yesterday. Now it carried the weight of every unanswered question. He accepted the call. "This is Ethan Crawford." A calm female voice answered after a brief silence. "I wasn't sure you would pick up. You know who I am? I've known who you are for a very long time." His pulse quickened. "Where is Claire?" Another pause. "I can't tell you that." "Is she all right?" Emily drew a slow breath. "I can only tell you that she's exactly where she wanted to be after leaving the courthouse." Ethan rose from his chair and walked toward the dark window overlooking Manhattan. "I found your appointment cards. I expected you would." "I didn't know." "I know." Those 2 words struck harder than any accusation. No anger, no blame, only quiet certainty. Ethan swallowed. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because Claire made us promise." His grip tightened around the phone. "Promise what?" "That if the day ever came when you learned the truth, it would be from her. Never from us." He closed his eyes. "She was receiving treatment for almost 2 years." "Yes. And I never noticed." Emily didn't answer immediately. When someone spends more time hiding another person's burdens than carrying her own, it's surprisingly easy to disappear in plain sight. Silence settled between them. Finally, Ethan spoke again. "Is she dying?" The question barely escaped his lips. Emily's voice softened. "I can't discuss her medical records. But you called me." "I called because Claire asked me to." His eyes opened. "When?" 3 months ago." The words froze him. "She left instructions." Emily continued carefully. "If the divorce was finalized before the baby arrived, I was to wait until you reached the 5th page of her letter." Ethan slowly looked down. 5 pages. Exactly where he was now. Claire had planned every step, every revelation, every pause, as though she already knew how slowly the truth would have to unfold. Emily spoke again. "There's something she wanted you to understand." "What?" "She never kept secrets because she stopped loving you." His breathing became uneven. "Then why?" "Because every time the doctors gave her difficult news, your company was facing another crisis." The memories rushed back. The hostile takeover, the lawsuit, the collapsing stock price, the endless nights Ethan spent inside conference rooms while Claire quietly told him everything would be all right. He had believed she was comforting him. He never imagined she had walked out of chemotherapy only hours before saying those words. "I don't deserve this." "No," Emily answered gently. "You deserve the truth." The line went silent. "I have patience waiting, Mr. Crawford. Please." His voice cracked. "I need to see her." If Claire wants that, she'll decide. The call ended. Ethan remained motionless. Outside, lightning flashed beyond the glass walls of Crawford Tower. Inside his office, every achievement suddenly looked meaningless. The awards lining the shelves, the framed magazine covers, the photographs celebrating billion-dollar acquisitions. None of them had been beside Claire on a single Thursday afternoon. His eyes drifted back to the envelope. Another smaller envelope had been tucked between the remaining pages. He hadn't noticed it before. Across the front, in Claire's familiar handwriting, was another message. Open this only after you've forgiven yourself enough to keep reading. His hands trembled. For the first time in years, Ethan realized forgiveness wasn't something money could purchase. It wasn't something success could negotiate. And it certainly wasn't something he believed he deserved. He carefully opened the smaller envelope. A tiny silver key slid into his palm. Attached to it was a handwritten tag. Safety Deposit Box 217. Hamilton National Bank. Beneath the key, Claire had written one final sentence. Everything I couldn't tell you is waiting inside. The truth was never locked inside the vault. The vault only existed because some wounds are too heavy to carry in plain sight. Hamilton National Bank stood in the financial district like a monument to old money, its granite columns untouched by fashion or time. At 9 o'clock the following morning, Ethan Crawford walked through the revolving doors carrying the small silver key Claire had left behind. For the first time in years, no assistants followed him. No lawyers. No security team. Only silence. A gray-haired bank manager greeted him with a respectful nod. "Mr. Crawford, we've been expecting you." "Expecting me?" The words caught him off guard. "You knew I would come?" The instructions were left over 2 years ago. 2 years. Claire had planned this long before the divorce papers had ever been drafted. The manager escorted him into the underground vault. Steel doors unlocked one after another with deep mechanical clicks. Finally, they stopped before a narrow deposit box. 217. The manager inserted his master key. "The rest is yours." He quietly stepped away. Ethan slid the silver key into the second lock. The metal cylinder turned effortlessly. Inside rested a single leather portfolio tied with a faded blue ribbon, the same shade as Claire's old sweater. His hands hesitated before opening it. The first document carried the title, Private Financial Trust Agreement. Beneath it sat dozens of signed contracts, transfer authorizations, investment guarantees, emergency collateral agreements. Every signature belonged to Claire Bennett. Every beneficiary was Crawford Technologies. His breathing became shallow. Another page. Another signature. Another sacrifice. Then he found the date. 26 months earlier. Exactly the week his company had stood on the edge of bankruptcy. Attached to the contracts was Claire's handwriting. "You once told me that a company is only paper until someone believes in it. I believed in yours because I believed in you." Ethan lowered his head. He remembered saying those words. Not during a board meeting. Not in an interview. He had whispered them to Claire one night while they were assembling a crib for the baby they hoped to have someday. She had remembered every word. He had forgotten. A second folder lay beneath the financial records. Family estate documents. His eyes narrowed. Claire Bennett. Sole surviving heir. Hamilton Family Foundation. Estimated inheritance, $412 million. Ethan stared in disbelief. Claire had never been an ordinary museum curator. She had been one of the wealthiest women in New York. Yet she had lived as though every dollar mattered. No designer handbags. No luxury vacations. No headlines. No private jets. Only quiet mornings, homemade breakfasts, and handwritten birthday cards. Michael Hamilton's voice interrupted the silence. I wondered how long it would take. Ethan turned. The elderly businessman stood quietly at the entrance of the vault. "You knew?" Michael nodded. "I've known since the day Claire asked me to protect her privacy. She never touched this money." "No. Why?" Michael walked closer. "Because she wanted someone to love Claire Bennett. Not Claire Hamilton." The words echoed through the empty vault. She refused every invitation to join the family board. She refused publicity. She even refused to let your company know who rescued it. Ethan looked back at the inheritance papers. "So she gave away nearly $40 million. Michael gently corrected him. 43. Ethan looked up. 43. The additional $5 million covered your legal settlements and employee pensions. The room seemed to tilt beneath him. While he had been accusing Claire of contributing nothing, She had quietly saved thousands of jobs. Michael reached into the portfolio and removed one final envelope. This wasn't inside the deposit box. Ethan frowned. Why not? Because Claire asked me to hand it to you only after you learned who she truly was. The envelope felt heavier than the others. Across the front, she had written only one sentence. The greatest lie wasn't about my money. It was about our son. For a long moment, Ethan simply stared at those words. His heartbeat echoed inside the silent vault. Money no longer mattered. The company no longer mattered. Only one question remained. What could Claire possibly mean about their child? The cruelest lies are not the ones that change the past. They're the ones that steal tomorrow. The envelope felt strangely warm in Ethan's hands. He broke the seal with trembling fingers. Inside rested a single folded sheet and a tiny ultrasound photograph, its corners softened by time. Claire's handwriting covered the first page. If you've reached this letter, then you finally know who I really was. But what I'm about to tell you has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with the little boy who already loves you, even if he has never heard your voice. Ethan swallowed hard. His eyes moved to the next paragraph. 3 months after I became pregnant, the specialist gave me a choice. Begin aggressive treatment immediately or delay everything until after our son was born. His vision blurred. He already knew the answer. Claire had chosen the baby. The doctors couldn't promise either of us would survive. They only promised that waiting would reduce my chances. He lowered the paper for a moment. The vault around him seemed impossibly silent. Every breath felt heavy. Every heartbeat echoed through the steel walls. He forced himself to continue. You once asked me why I smiled whenever the baby kicked. The truth is, every kick reminded me that one life was growing stronger while mine might be growing shorter. A tear landed on the page. Ethan didn't wipe it away. For years, he had believed Claire was overly emotional during the pregnancy. Now he understood. She hadn't been afraid of becoming a mother. She had been afraid she would never become one for very long. Another folded document slipped from the envelope. It was a consent form. Hospital authorization. Patient decision. At the bottom appeared Claire's unmistakable signature. Patient declines immediate treatment to continue pregnancy. Date: 18 weeks before the divorce. Michael Hamilton quietly stood several feet away, saying nothing. He understood this was no longer a business matter. It was a husband meeting the truth far too late. Ethan unfolded the final page. Claire's handwriting became slightly uneven, as though her hands had been trembling while writing. Please don't hate yourself because of my choice. He closed his eyes. How could he do anything else? You never asked me to sacrifice my health. You never knew I was doing it. The blame belongs to no one except the woman who couldn't imagine bringing our son into the world without giving him every chance to live. His breathing broke. No. The whisper disappeared inside the vault. Claire continued. If one day he asks whether his father loved him before he was born, tell him yes. Because even when you forgot to love me, I never stopped seeing the man you used to be. Ethan covered his face with one hand. Images crashed through his mind. Claire quietly folding tiny baby clothes. Claire laughing while painting the nursery walls. Claire pretending morning sickness was getting better. Claire insisting she was simply tired. Every memory now carried a meaning he had completely missed. Then he noticed one last photograph hidden beneath the papers. It showed Claire sitting alone in a hospital room. One hand rested on her swollen belly. The other held a small digital recorder. On the back she had written, "Your son already knows your voice." Confused, Ethan searched the envelope again. His fingers touched a slim black flash drive taped inside. A small white label had been attached. Play this only when you're ready to hear what I heard every night. Michael finally spoke. She asked me to give you one piece of advice. Ethan looked up slowly. What was it? Michael's weathered eyes reflected quiet sorrow. Whatever you hear next, remember she listened to it believing your son deserved to know his father. Ethan stared at the tiny flash drive resting in his palm. It weighed almost nothing. Yet somehow, it felt heavier than every fortune Claire had ever sacrificed. A father's voice can travel farther than he ever will. Sometimes, it reaches a child before the father learns how to love. The flash drive clicked softly into Ethan's laptop. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then a single audio file appeared. For our son, MP3 created 19 months earlier. His hand hovered above the keyboard. He almost closed the computer. He almost convinced himself he wasn't ready. Instead, he pressed play. Static filled the office. A few seconds later, Claire's gentle laughter drifted through the speakers. I think he's awake again. Another sound followed. A heartbeat monitor. Then Ethan's own voice. Not speaking to Claire. He was leaving a voicemail. I'm sorry I can't make dinner tonight. Another board meeting. Tell our little guy his dad's building something incredible for his future. The recording paused. Claire whispered softly. You heard that, sweetheart? Daddy's working very hard because he already loves you. Silence. Then another recording. Weeks later, Ethan's voice again, this time from a business interview playing on television. If you want success, you sacrifice comfort today for security tomorrow. Claire laughed quietly. Did you hear Daddy? That's why he misses bedtime stories. Another pause. One day he'll tell you those stories himself. Ethan covered his mouth. He had never known. Every interview, every voicemail, every speech. Claire had recorded them all. Not for herself, for the little boy growing inside her. The playlist continued. 43 recordings. Business presentations. Award acceptance speeches. Phone messages. Even random voice notes Ethan had forgotten sending years earlier. Each one followed by Claire speaking gently to her unborn son. That's Daddy. Listen to his laugh. Did you hear how excited he sounded today? I want you to recognize his voice the moment he holds you. Tears blurred Ethan's vision until the screen disappeared behind shimmering light. He had spent months believing Claire was pushing him away. She had spent those same months bringing him closer to a son he had barely made time to know. The final recording began. Unlike the others, Claire sounded noticeably weaker. Her breathing was slower, more labored. If you're hearing this, a long pause. Then our little miracle is probably almost ready to meet the world. Another breath. I don't know if I'll be beside you when that happens. Ethan felt his heart stop. But I know one thing. Her voice softened into a smile. Our son will never question whether his father loved him. A faint kick echoed through the microphone as Claire laughed quietly. Oh, there you go again. He always kicks when he hears your voice. Ethan lowered his head onto the desk. The room dissolved into silence except for Claire's final words. If I can't be there, promise me you'll let him hear his father every day. The recording ended. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. Until Ethan's phone rang. Dr. Emily Lawson. He answered immediately. Ethan. Her voice was urgent. Claire went into labor. He shot to his feet. Where? I wasn't supposed to tell you. Emily. Another pause. But I don't think Claire expected everything to happen this quickly. His heartbeat thundered through his chest. Tell me. St. Gabriel Medical Center. I'm leaving now. There's something else. He froze. What? The delivery has become complicated. The world narrowed into absolute silence. The doctors are preparing for emergency surgery. The call disconnected. Within seconds, Ethan was running. He abandoned his laptop. The recordings continued playing through the empty office. Claire's soft laughter echoed behind him. Outside, cold rain drenched the city as he sprinted toward his waiting car, praying that the woman he had already lost would survive long enough to hear him say the words he should have spoken months ago. I'm coming home, Claire. For the first time in years, nothing in the world mattered more than reaching her before it was too late. Justice rarely arrives with applause. Sometimes it arrives as the first cry of a child, in the silence of a man who finally understands what he has lost. The automatic doors of St. Gabriel Medical Center burst open as Ethan ran inside, rainwater dripping from his suit onto the polished floor. Claire Bennett, he shouted toward the reception desk. The nurse looked up immediately. Family, I'm her husband. She hesitated, then quietly corrected him. You were. The single word struck like a blade. She's in surgery 3. Without another question, Ethan sprinted down the corridor, guided only by the flashing emergency lights above the operating room. He stopped when he reached the closed doors. A red light glowed overhead. Surgery in progress. For the first time in his life, there was nothing his wealth could buy. No boardroom strategy. No legal contract. No negotiation. Only waiting. Minutes stretched into hours. Every sound echoed through the empty hallway. The ticking wall clock. The distant footsteps of nurses. The steady hum of hospital machines. Then, a baby's cry. Sharp. Powerful. Alive. Ethan's knees nearly gave way. Seconds later, the operating room doors opened. Dr. Emily Lawson removed her surgical mask and walked toward him. Her exhausted eyes softened. You have a son. Tears immediately filled Ethan's eyes. And Claire. Emily looked down for a long moment before answering. She's alive. The air rushed back into his lungs. But his heart tightened again. She lost a great deal of blood. We've stabilized her, but recovery will be long. He nodded repeatedly, unable to speak. Emily smiled faintly. Before she went into surgery, she gave me something. She handed him a small white envelope. Claire's handwriting covered the front. Only after you hear our son's first cry. With trembling fingers, Ethan opened it. Inside was a single handwritten page. Dear Ethan, if you're reading this, then our little miracle has arrived. A tear rolled down his cheek. Please don't spend the rest of your life punishing yourself. Our son deserves a father who smiles when he looks at him, not a man imprisoned by regret. His vision blurred. Love him enough for both of us on the days when I cannot. Another pause. Then the final lines. The greatest gift you ever gave me wasn't your company. It wasn't your name. It wasn't your success. It was the little heartbeat we created together. Take care of him. And finally take care of yourself. Emily gently touched his shoulder. Would you like to meet your son? Unable to answer, Ethan simply nodded. A nurse placed the tiny newborn into his arms. The baby had a soft blanket wrapped around him. Wisps of pale blonde hair rested against his tiny forehead. His small fingers instinctively closed around Ethan's thumb. At that exact moment, the baby opened his eyes. Gray. The same quiet gray as his father's. Ethan smiled through tears. Hello, buddy. The infant became still, as though he already recognized the voice Claire had faithfully played for him every night before he was born. Months later, Crawford Technologies announced that Ethan Crawford had resigned as CEO. His shares were transferred into a charitable foundation supporting women facing high-risk pregnancies and children in need of medical care. Reporters searched for dramatic interviews. They never found one. Instead, every Thursday afternoon, visitors to St. Gabriel Medical Center often noticed a quiet man sitting beside a recovery room window. A little blond boy laughed in his arms while a beautiful woman, still healing but finally smiling again, watched them from her chair. No headlines celebrated that moment. No cameras captured it. They didn't need to, because some men spend their lives building empires, and some lose everything they thought they owned, before discovering that the greatest fortune was the family waiting for them to come home.